Civilization, the Chinese were there, and they are still here. Hello, I'm Peter Weller. When the Egyptians were building their pyramids, the Chinese already had sumptuous palaces for their kings. When Rome was planning its soaring aqueduct that would bathe its citizens and quench their thirst, the Chinese were redirecting an entire river by blowing up a mountain before gunpowder and building a dam that would irrigate thousands and thousands of acres of land and launch a population explosion the world had never seen.
"4,000 years ago, Chinese civilization rose and spread across a vast area, 1/3 larger than the United States. But for centuries, China was in turmoil. Separate kingdoms battled for power and control. Conflict and combat ravaged the land.
China was, as we think of it today, more or less, was made up of a number of states, all of which were fighting with one another for supremacy. The period was called the Warring States.
By the 3rd century BC, one kingdom emerged as the most powerful and the most ruthless. A western province, home to a hostile, warlike people. They were ambitious, forbidding, and determined to conquer and unite all 7 kingdoms. They were called the Qin. Their unification of this vast land would create an empire like no other the world has ever seen. The Qin prospered in a region that was fertile and flat, with access to prime trading routes like the famed Silk Road, connecting them to the farthest reaches of China and beyond. Over time, the Qin developed 2 critical military advantages over the other kingdoms. From neighboring nomads and barbarians, the Qin mastered horsemanship. Simultaneously, they also changed strategy for waging war. Until now, wars had been fought by small platoons of nobles riding in chariots. But the recent discovery of new metal forging technologies led to mass production of weapons and the rise of a new type of warrior, the foot soldier.
It was a time when the use of iron became much more widespread. So just at the same time as infantry armies, which tended to be much larger, came in, so it was possible to make more weapons.
With this tactical breakthrough, the Qin launched an offensive to conquer all of China. As one kingdom after another fell, the Qin faced a new challenge: how to quickly produce enough food to fuel their now massive army. That responsibility fell to one man. His name was Li Bing, a Qin official who was one of the greatest hydraulic engineers of all time. Under his guidance, Chinese builders would construct a masterpiece of engineering. For centuries, the Min River had tormented the Chinese people, causing winter droughts and summer floods. Now, Li Bing was determined to harness its raging waters. The centerpiece of his plan was a levee that would create a whole new waterway, a channel to control flooding, as well as to provide a water supply for desperately needed food production. But Li Bing had an enormous problem. Mount Jiang, standing directly in the path of his irrigation channel. He couldn't move the mountain, so he decided to carve a path for his new waterway straight through it. Long before the invention of gunpowder, it would have taken decades to cut a path through the mountain by manual labor using only hammers and drills. The Qin military demanded more immediate results, forcing Li Bing to devise a bold new technology. He'd let the forces of nature do the heavy lifting for him. First, heating the rocks through controlled fires, then dousing them with cold water. This caused the boulders to crack into small pieces that could be carted away. 8 years after he started, Li Bing had blasted an irrigation channel straight through the mountain. Now he had to construct the enormous levee that would divert the waters of the Min into the new irrigation channel. Thousands of workers were brought to the site, working with nothing but muscle and chisels, carving out the earth. Remarkably, Li Bing designed a levee that could regulate the raging waters of the Min according to the season. In summer, more water could be driven to the irrigation channel to prevent flooding along the river. In winter, the proportions were reversed, directing more water into the river to avoid drought. By irrigating a vast stretch of Qin territory, Li Bing's levee triggered a massive population boom, and the military had a new base to launch attacks into enemy territory. The state of Qin was evolving into a powerhouse.
And he used the wealth created by agriculture and the power created by the military to unite all of China.
In 247 BC, that job was left to the Qin's new emperor, a 13-year-old named Yingzheng. The young ruler assumed the throne with his mother acting as queen dowager. But Yingzheng came to power in a palace teeming with enemies, already plotting his demise. Knives were being sharpened. At the top of the list of those who wanted him dead was his own mother. She now had a lover and 2 new sons she wanted on the throne. At the age of 22, Yingzheng discovered her plot to have him killed. He had his mother banished and his stepbrothers and her lover killed. His authority was now absolute. With his throne secured, Yingzheng sent his armies out to finish the job of unifying all of China. Only one kingdom stood in the way. They were called the Chu. In 238 BC, the Qin launched an epic all-out war on the Chu in a conflict that raged doggedly on for 15 years. Finally, in 223 BC, they too raised the banner of surrender. The last great obstacle to the Qin conquest of China had been crushed.
The Qin supremacy over the Chu is they were able to organize their armies in a much more efficient way than had been done before.
The Qin dream of empire was complete. China was unified and at peace. Now a true emperor, Yingzheng needed a royal name. He would come to be known throughout China and around the world simply as Shi Huangdi, the first emperor. Shi Huangdi proclaimed his dynasty would last 10,000 generations. It was during his reign that China embarked on perhaps the most spectacular construction project of all time. A wall, unlike any the world had ever seen. But the Qin would pay a heavy price for their emperor's grand ambitions, in the wrath of ruthless leaders and the blood of its own people. The Chinese invented deep drilling in the 1st century BC and were able to drill boreholes up to 4,800 feet deep. 220 BC, China's first emperor, the triumphant Shi Huangdi, sets off to survey his new empire. For the first time ever, China was unified and secure, and he intended to keep it that way, with the most ambitious engineering project ever conceived. The Great Wall of China.
Well, the Great Wall was a linking up of walls that had existed previously. A number of states in the north of China had built walls partly to defend against one another, but more importantly, to defend their northern frontier.
It remains to this day unsurpassed by modern engineering. A single impregnable barrier to seal the vast Chinese empire from the outside world, along a border that stretches for thousands of miles.
This is Chongqing In Mandarin, it means long wall. And believe me, covering more turf than the continental United States is wide, and including all of its spurs that go off into no place, it's 6,000 miles. And man, that's long. Shi Huangdi, China's first emperor, started building it 2,000 years ago. It was worked on right up until the 17th century. But the original wall didn't look like this. It was kind of a mud brick affair, but it presented an interesting engineering challenge nonetheless, because it had to go all the way from the sea in the east to the Gobi Desert in the west, just to keep the northern nomads like the Mongols out and the Chinese people in. If it took the audacity of emperors to dream great, it took the relentless drive of the Chinese labor force to build great, but not without a price. Their capacity to endure hardship was unimaginable. Men, women, and children worked with their hands on this wall, and if you complained or tried to run away, you were killed. Disease was constant, injury was commonplace. Dressed only in rags, these people suffered bitter cold, bitter hunger, bitter exhaustion. Records say that at the height of production on this wall, close to 1/5 of China's entire labor force, 1 million people were working here, and 1/4 of those people died. And if you died here, usually you were buried here, in the wall, giving rise to its other nickname among some, the Long Graveyard.
Millions of arms and legs and backs were broken to build the wall.
There is very moving poetry, mostly written by wives and mothers, about young boys going off and working on the Great Wall Project, not having food, dying in the cold winters, and never returning home.
But brute force would not be enough. Different regions had vastly different terrain and varying construction materials on hand. Wherever possible, engineers added to existing walls, but most of it was built from scratch. They devised a brilliant system utilizing one material they had in abundance.
The tamped earth method is what Chinese is called a hangtu. What this means is that you build a wooden frame to enclose the wall, and you start low with, say, 2 boards parallel, and then you pour some gravel and some sticks and some clay, and then you use the end of a log to beat it and pound it until it's very, very compact. And then you put another layer in, and you keep doing that, and then you put other boards on the outside to hold it in place, and you keep going up and keep going up until you reach the height that you want.
When it was dry, the frame was removed, leaving just a solid slab of tamped earth, strengthened by the willow reeds, like the steel rebar that reinforces modern concrete. The southern side, facing China, was defended by a simple parapet, while the northern side, facing the barbarians, was crenellated. There was a guard tower every 700 to 1,000 yards. A paved road ran along the top of the wall for troops and even wagons, making it an efficient communications route, especially for the soldiers stationed at each tower. But as a